Welcome, everybody, for another episode of Competitive Edge, brought to you by our wonderful betting sponsor, esportsbet.io, the main hub for crypto betting and esports and other sports as well. Today, we're going to be covering Blast Premier Fall Groups 2023. There's going to be 3 groups. It's going to be the big event that's going to kick off the beginning of the new season after the player break. And joining me to give his analysis will be none other than the maestro himself, Thorin. Thorin, how are you doing, dude?
All right. Spoiler, still not CS2, is it? So it's all good. We're still in our wheelhouse, still CSGO. Just get into it. But the key thing is all the new rosters, crazy roster mania.
That's, I mean, dude, this has been an active offseason. It's been every day. I'm just going through, just scrolling through news. Okay, this team made changes, this team made changes. Even tier 2 are shaking it all up. Now you got Sprout with the new, like, everybody's making changes in this offseason, and it's got to be one of the more active offseasons we've ever had in CSGO. I'd say so. All right,
some
so there's
questionable moves, as we'll get into.
Yeah, that's the thing. I want to hear your thoughts on some of these for sure, because some of these definitely caught me even by surprise. So very curious to see what you have to say. But the way that Blast works is that there are 3 groups, 4 teams in a group, and we'll be giving you what we think is going to happen in the opening matchups of these groups, and we'll also cap off at the end who we think may win these groups. So, lot to get through. Let's just hop right into it. So, Group A, Team Vitality versus Evil Geniuses to kick things off in this group. It's definitely one of those meme matchups. There's been a bit of meme magic walking around lately that Vitality aren't going to be able to handle the heat.
Right, the obvious problem here is, right, let's just for a second ignore the Vitality angle. Right, Evil Geniuses basically made a mild upgrade or a side grade. Like everyone knows there was those stories, and apparently they're true, that they were going for people who were like electronic, massive name players, like from obviously from Russia, and then they were even going to potentially even have like Jax. They were looking at EliGE. Like there's a whole bunch of massive names. In the end, for reasons maybe on a different show I'll go into, they reversed course and basically didn't even go back to the old. They were just like, right, here's like some other players that are good from NA, up and comers, and we're just going to make an NA lineup again. So we're back to the meme about the talent pipeline or whatever. So the problem is right now, there's no reason to expect this team can beat the kinds of teams that are at Blast. It'd probably be the worst team in the bracket. Then who are they playing? The #1 team in the world. A team that, like, I mean, the joke is you could take Zero and Spinks, put them in the game 2v5, and it feels like they could win. Just me and you could play with them, and then like the producer, like that 5-man, I think could beat Evil Geniuses. So until EG actually shows something, like maybe some of these are up-and-coming players. I know Maui's excited about them, but not at this level, not to beat Vitality. So the problem here, obviously, is, as you can imagine, the odds are absurdly low for Vitality. So even though I'm certain Vitality will win, this is a trap game. Don't bet the underdog. EG is not going to win. I don't care what the odds are. It's just way too low odds for Vitality. So I don't know what the point in betting Vitality is.
It's worth mentioning as well, no best of ones, right? So if you had a best of 1, maybe in some crazy world, I mean, 7-1 odds, best of 1, cold start for Vitality, all the reasons, right? But these are best of 3s. So you have to imagine
it's a really good map pool, or they have everything, mate. They have everything in this one.
This Real quick, actually, I want to get your thoughts on this, because it looks like it's not going to be Dupree playing in Vitality here going into this one. It's Flames who's actually going to be joining Vitality. So real quick, like, are you happy with this one? Yay or nay?
Here's the thing. I do think upgrading from Dupree was the right move. Like, he had a couple of tournaments there where it was like, all right, but that was his best he'd had the whole time he'd been in Vitality for more than a year. So to me, I do think it was time to move on. By the way, actually winning's when sometimes it is appropriate, because when you win is when everyone wants to join. My only problem is this one. I don't hate the Flames move. I just find it more like I don't know why they're gambling on like youth and inexperience. Like, because this is the thing, they didn't need to. They were in the catbird seat. They could have been the ones who were like, we take like electronic or something. They could have done some crazy power move and gone for like the ultimate roster. So to me, that's the only angle I'm not as big a fan of. I assume it's because Spinks is mates with him, fellow Israeli player. Maybe there's some connection there. But the other thing as well is this: when Flames was an OG, I thought he was good, but a bit streaky, right? And that was a team that essentially he had like a star component in, right? In this team, there's no way, for example, on CT side, he's just getting his spots. Like, sorry, like they've got stars already in this team. So I can see why they think it's a replacement for Dupree, but I don't know actually if it's that much of an upgrade. I think it's maybe like a mild upgrade for me. So I'm not super hyped on it like everyone else is. I still think they can be one of the best teams in the world. Like, might not have even needed the roster move, but yeah, I'm not riding too high on this. I have to see it, because the problem with Flames is like, even in OG, when was he ever going deep in a tournament? When's he ever played a big stage match? When's he ever played a match where you're #1 in the world and this team you're playing in the semi-final, you got to be, he never done any of these things. So I've got to see him blooded. I've got to see he can actually do it for me.
Yeah, it's going to be the big question mark, especially ending on a high like that for Vitality. Dupree, you're thinking the whole system is working. Why are you going to go and rock the boat? Why are you going to go and make changes? Well, all right, let's see here. The next matchup that's going to be happening. I mean, Group A is there's going to be some fun ones here. This one's definitely going to be a little bit more interesting in the sense that it could be a very much more even matchup between NIP at 1.5 odds versus Complexity at 2.4. So, man, this complexity, the complexity move, like one of these is not like the others because now you've got EliGE joining this team. And so this is, love to hear your thoughts about this one because Complexity Gaming getting EliGE, awesome, except that EliGE also seemed to be really struggling going into the player break. So is this as big a move as we think it is for Complexity, or is it EliGE just kind of making some moves of his own? Also, did he have to divest his shares in Liquid?
I have no idea if you have to do that or not. I mean, I don't think anyone cares in CSGO. Like, I don't know if you noticed when people were just like, they're murderers
Yeah,
buying the leagues and stuff. I don't think people care about stuff like that anymore, mate. Like, the joke is that's just some stuff they think Richard Lewis wouldn't stop talking about years ago. So, enough said on that one. I would imagine in theory you would have to, but again, who knows with how esports works. So, the key thing for me, it's like you say, the name value's enormous. You've got EliGE. The problem is you've got EliGE at absolute rock bottom that he's ever been in about 9 years or something insane like that. So, the question here for me is this. Is EliGE going to like take all the star roles? Are they going to put all the resources in him? Is this going to be the renaissance, the one last big ride? Because he's obviously played quite a long time now and been very good for very many years. He's the most consistent NA star ever. But he looked so bad at the end in TL. Again, I have to see it. If they really can do it, it gives it an interesting factor. So the problem is this, right? When I look at their squad, I was never convinced by Complexity anyway, and that's the only change they've made. Like they swapped out Fang and they brought in EliGE. Like, yeah, Grim can be good. He's not like a true European star. Floppy has some games here and there. JT's an all right caller, but a terrible fragger. Holzerk's always been, I think, actually like a bit of an underwhelming tier 1 AWPer. The odd map that he goes off, here's the joke. It's like, how do you know if Holzerk had a good map or someone's a vegetarian? Don't worry, they'll tell you. They'll tell you. Like, they can't. Every time you've ever seen it, it's all over Twitter. Like, spoil it doesn't happen that often. Like, no one has to go and say, oh, something insane, man. He's had 20 kills. Like, yeah, he does that every day. Like, what's he breathing air to? And is it the ending and why? Like, so to me, I'm not convinced by the call lineup. I actually wanted them to be a team that made bigger moves or went, balls out and tried to get some of the Russian players too. They didn't. They just got EliGE. Okay, cool for the NA brand. Is the thing, I ain't from America, mate. I could just support the teams I think are good. So even though the funny thing is, on the other side, you got Nip, who've obviously kicked Alexi B. He's now in Navi. Thanks for that, by the way. I actually appreciate this Nip org. They're letting like people like XCB go to better orgs. He can play with the GOAT now. Cool. I am with that. What I'm not with is, I do like Hampers. I think he's good. But the whole thing was, I never thought he was good as an IGL. He's a really interesting, like, lurky player. He actually leveled his fragging up a lot those last few years when we came back to LAN. But I've never believed him as an IGL. So I look at his team. I'm going to assume they're going to play a fairly simple CS. They're going to play defaulty, go back to the Swedish style. The thing is, head trick for me was getting good by the end, but he's one of the players, like 17-year-old, wasn't an AWPer, now AWPer from Ukraine. I have to imagine Lexi B was very heavily involved with that. He was working with this guy, helping him set up for the game, putting him in position. So that's the player I'm scared about, is what's Hedrick going to do when he's just in a team where you're just playing a bit loosey-goosey. Everyone else is either Swedish or Nordic, and then you're just there like, hello. Like, I don't know if that works. So even though in general I'm not so high on Nip, they're playing Complexity. So I still think the talent in Nip, this is good enough to get it done. This is good enough to win this game. Now, we'll see the odds, 1.5. Oh, that's a little bit trickier. So here's the thing. If I look at all these matches here, I can't just tell you not to bet in nearly all of them. So there's going to be some other ones, like the Vitality one, that I'm going to tell you not to bet on. So here's the thing. If you like Nip for this one, I don't hate the odds. I just would prefer maybe if it was like 1.6, 1.7, because obviously it's a new lineup. I haven't seen Hampers play again. But I still think there's enough quality there. They should be able to win the best of 3.
Okay, so yeah, now this is that is also. I feel like a lot of these opening matches, it is always going to be a little bit of a guessing game as well.
I mean, the Rostermania angle makes it so hard. It's sight unseen, isn't it?
Exactly. So you should think like, yes. I mean, and to be fair, like the odds.
If you're only going to bet on 2 games, say, just don't do this one. If you're going to bet on 3 or 4, yeah, this is one where if you want to bet on this one, you can go win it. I think it's not bad.
Yeah. All right. Let's move into Group B now, because now we have one that actually hasn't made any changes, and that's Heroic. Stavin, Katie, and Tessa, Shush, Javi, still the same 5, sticking with their guns. So we just talked about some of the craziest roster mania where it feels like everybody's shaking things up, and Heroic have elected not to get involved. And so is this going to be a question of regret by the end of this group? Are they going to be feeling like they're a little bit left out here, like they could have made a move, or do you think that they've placed their faith in the correct place?
The problem is, if you notice, I always make this point, Heroic never spends money. Like the players they bring in, they always bring in people who actually, if anything, get better in their team, like Yabi, like Tesses, like Shush, etc. Like they don't go for the big name signings. So as far as I know, they aren't even interested in like, hey, let's try and get Device or Blame F away from like Astralis. Like, they're not even on the table for these moves. So to me, I think it's fine for them to stay. They're a really good team. Their issue isn't like the players. It's things like stage experience, like winning mindset in the clutch of a massive game on game 3, playing at majors. Like none of that applies here. We're in the group stage. They are probably the best teamwork. They probably have the best IGL. They have the general best floor of any team in the game. I love them to win this game. The problem obviously is I don't love 1.14 odds. That's another one where I've got to tell you, I'm staying away from that. And here's the sad thing. You said it earlier. If this was BO1s, I love me a big clan BO1 upset. They're brilliant at one-off. Tabson just has a great game. Someone frags out. Two things. One, Sirison benched himself. Sirison was one of your main win conditions. He's the guy who could go streaky and go ham on a map like a Nuke or a Dust 2 back in the day. He's not there anymore. You got Man2, old school OG player. Old school, because that's how old CS is now. And then obviously you've got this silly scenario where, because it's a best of 3, I don't get, you make the odds a million. I don't think they're winning a best of 3. That's the issue I have, because I don't know where the firepower comes from. I don't know how they could overcome Heroic. Like Heroic, remember, they beat teams that in theory have more firepower than them at the top end of the scene in big semi-finals. So I think this is like a classic example where, yeah, Heroic's going to win, but again, I think the odds are too low. I think everyone knows they're going to win. That's why the odds are 1.1.
Yeah, that's the thing. Some of these are going to be really tough. But that is, it's just this whole best of 3 angle, like you said, that is kind of throwing things off. If it was best of 1, yeah.
Also an amazing map pool.
But best of 3, it's so rough. It's so tough. All right, moving into the next one. I think this one's going to be a bit on the spicy side because you have Navi 1.65 odds going up against Astralis in a best of 3, 2.0 odds for Astralis. And I mean, Astralis do not have Glaive in their starting roster. And then Navi, I mean, dude, like you said, Alexi B's there, JL, IM, huge roster changes coming in from Navi. So this is going to be definitely one of the more interesting matches to watch to see just what kind of shape Navi are in or going into this season.
Yeah, the problem here is, like, I like the Stair addition for Astralis. Yeah, you want to add that player in. It's better than one of the academy players. The problem is, Blame F takes over IGL. I wasn't a fan of Blame F IGL in complexity. I always thought he looked like old school Happy. He frags out, they lose the game, but he's supposedly doing a good job IGL. It's like something doesn't add up here. So to me, I hate the fact that they've gone back to that. Quite frankly, I think Astralis for the last few years has just been cynical. Aside from buying Device, it's just been cynical move where you just bring in talent players from the academy that you pay very little money to. You try and pick up this, you wait till the contract ends and you pick the guy up for free. So it's like they have some all right players. They have a couple of good players. The problem is the IGL angle is now going to completely throw a wrench in all of this. And then I look at it, they still kept the Buzz guy. They've obviously, like, Hunden's gone. So if he was bringing anything to him, that's out the window. The big issue right now is I just don't know how Astralis gets much better in the very short term. Maybe in the longer term they can be a bit better. I still don't see them as a world-class team. I think the name is carrying them, and the name like Device is carrying them. Whereas you look at Navi, right? First things first, everyone knows I'm a big Alexi B fan. I made this point in a TikTok, right? When everyone tells me Alexi B was crap and he never accomplished anything, right? He was in 4 teams, Semmler. Here's his AWPers. Alu in 2019, even though you remember they were in the major final, winning tournaments, he wasn't even a top 20 player that year. Okay, so he was like above average, but he wasn't a world-class AWPer in the old sense like he was in 2015. Then you go to his next team, OG. Man2, the guy who's now in big, was his AWPer, like a guy who'd never even AWPed before. Then you go over and he was in G2. Yeah, he had Monacy. When Monacy was 16, never played a big LAN ever in his life. Still got him to the Katowice final. Then you go to Nip, the last one. Like I said, 17-year-old head trick. Never played AWP before, except like a few weeks in Navi or something stupid. And he's working with him in a Nordic team. Like, I think this guy's been having like absolute... He's on some like Rumpelstiltskin stuff where he's taking a straw and trying to make it into gold. Then you go, all right, Alexi, you know what? You've done your hard yards, lad. The Lord taketh, the Lord giveth. Just have the GOAT AWPer, the best player ever and the best player at killing people with the AWP. You know what? I think you can just have a good time with that. So then you look at the rest of the team. Already those two I'm sold. Then you look at the rest. The Immer guy is a beast and is sort of like a follow-up / second entry pack player. Could be really interesting here. It certainly seems to have his own mind about himself. Has some Nico-esque qualities if you see him on T side. Looks like another player who could do what he wants. And then the JL guy, yeah, I think he's a little bit of a bonehead, but man, he can frag. He used to actually be an AWPer Pauper, if people don't know, but in Apex, they turned him into a rifler. He's really got good aim. So I think the firepower is bonkers in this team. So when I look at this matchup, I know some people are going to be like, oh, the cheeky Astralis underdog. They're only 2.09 odds, though. So to me, I say you take Navi at 1.66 essentially all day long. I'm taking this. Like, look at the firepower. Look at the different interesting players. Yeah, it's going to take them time to blend, but it's talking about beating Astralis in a BO3. We're not talking about winning the tournament yet.
No, that's the thing. And man, I'm so curious to see how EliGE and Blade work together, because that's another thing that did not change the coaching angle for Navi. Blade is going to stick in this. And you would think that Blade, working with a guy like EliGE who loves a structured game, Blade loves a structured game, does their game sync? Can they get on the same wavelength and actually work together to build some kind of structured game here for Navi? I mean, I saw an interview real quick with Simple coming into this event saying that it's going to be challenging because it's exciting because everything's new, but it's also hard because everything's new. And so, just how much are they shaking things up and how long have they had to be able to get things in line? Oh man, it's going to be so much fun to watch that match.
I'm going to do a video on this soon, but I'm so sick of everyone because they heard years ago, like EliGE like micromanages everyone, right? They just repeat that as if like he is like a character in a video game with static stats and he doesn't change. Like what they don't get is he micromanages Semmler when he's in like the OG lineup with a bunch of rookies and players that have never played their role before and they've never been to the top, because the worse your players are, the more you micromanage. When he actually has big names, I've talked to players, I'm going to do a video on this topic. He doesn't micromanage like that. Like, spoiler, in the same way as he didn't with Nico, he's not going to tell Simple, this is how I'm going to use. Yeah, Simple's going to do Simple's things. If anything, you look at it, maybe he's going to put people like JL in position or figure out how to get more out of bait. People like Immer, people like Simple, I expect him to give them free reign. I've heard from some of his teammates, he's way more open to input than people think. So I think there's massive potential in this team. The big problem in this team is just that you're mashing together some crazy mixture of nationalities. You're speaking in English now, etc. That's one thing. Let's see how obviously Bit does, because I know Simple can speak English, but I think actually this has massive potential. Meanwhile, like I say, I'm just not an Astralis believer. I like Device, but I'm not an Astralis believer. So for this one, I'm taking Navi. I think these odds are great to bet on.
And I'm actually following you on that one, placing a bet on that real quick myself. All right, let's see here. So moving into the, well, this is going to be Group C now, because that is Group B. And what a Group B we're going to get, actually. Heroic and Navi in both of that. I mean, that's going to be sick. All right, so Group C, we're kicking off with FaZe versus OG. And FaZe, another one of those teams that elected not to make any changes with their roster. But, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, actually. They have lost their analyst, who has been with them since the start of their long run. Innershine has taken a coaching role in another team now, so he's had his step up to a coaching role. He's not going to be there working with Roban and working with Kerrigan anymore, despite the fact that they've been together basically since the Mouse days with Kerrigan. So I'm kind of curious. Do you think that that's going to play a big role, or do you think that it's overhype, or there's we're reading too much into it?
I mean, the knock on FaZe Clan, well, the few ones you can have is, if anything, the joke is, there's a reason Roban didn't win Coach of the Year last year, because no one actually thinks he's a traditional coach, because everyone thinks it comes from the mind of Kerrigan and his game plan. And he's a guy who's like, 34 years old or something, and still like a genius at the game, and only gets more and more smart, becomes Megamind. So the problem is, if there's any one team, I don't really give a monkeys what the bloody analyst does, and it's definitely FaZe Clan. If you look at how they play like, they just play with what they've got now. They play off a few ideas before the game. They try and read the game. It's why, by the way, they get stronger as a game goes on. Once Kerrigan sees your whole set of defenses, your whole playbook, now he can start to mess with that. Now he can start moving pawns on the chessboard. So I don't think that's a factor at all. I don't mind at all FaZe Clan sticking with the same team again. The only real move you would ever consider is maybe if you'd had a superstar, you could have replaced Rain. But quite frankly, it's not like Rain is terrible. It's just that's more for CS2 maybe. Because I also think that's part of the Flames to Vitality thinking is like, right, in CS2, you don't want to be going in with someone old like Dupree that's at the end of his time. You want to start it with a young guy with mechanics if the game's different and stuff. I think it's fine for FaZe to keep the same lineup. The problem obviously here is, as you can imagine, they have very low odds. They have 1.12. So I wouldn't bet the FaZe side, even though I think they will win. OG's an interesting one, because here's the thing. If you're a fan of tier 2, they're all going to get hyped like, oh, I've seen these guys. They could be good. Welcome to EliGE hell, Nexa. You're in OG now, my Jew. And you know in OG, where they used to have Dexter, amazing player. Yeah, they kicked him. Don't worry about that. Like, they don't want him. He's gone. He's out there. Not playing for anyone right now, apparently. Instead, you've kept Fiku. He's all right, actually. I thought he was one of the players you might keep. But you've added Regali, who people do tout quite highly. Maybe he can be good.
They do.
My problem then is you got Keto and Fasher. Keto's the guy where it's like a Jax. He just runs in no matter what, like a soldier. Sometimes he frags, sometimes he doesn't. There's a reason in Big he's sort of in and out of the lineups. It's like, I think he's all right, but he's streaky. He's not a star player. So then that leaves Fasher. If anyone was watching Fnatic for the last year and a half, Fasha is the most like generic human being to ever play pro CS at tier 1. He is just a guy who'd be like, I do 0.63 KPR every single game. It's like, do you ever carry any? No, I am Dutch. I do not. Can I have some paprika? That is too spicy. Like, he's just boring. And the problem is that tier 2, I was told he was popping off and he was someone who had skills. This isn't tier 2, homie. This is tier 1 still. So I think this is such an underwhelming roster. Like, I actually think Nexa can frag, but man, like I said, he's in the EliGE B seat. It's like, good luck making gold out of this hair that you've been given. Like, man alive, you're in for a tough time, mate. So normally, if this was like the lineup with Dexter, and you know, I'd say, oh, maybe we can do a cheeky underdog here somewhere because the odds are big for OG. What reason do I have to believe in OG right now? This is like a bad version of the Navi one. It's a mishmash of roster players, but it's like, what connection? What's it? Essentially, they're trusting that Rugger or someone at OG is a genius at scouting and has made really shrewd moves. If that ends up happening, I'll tip my hat. Right now, I just say I don't bet this game.
Yeah, that's the only line that you can follow is just that Rugga or somebody behind there is, you know, really doing a good job. Maybe it's Vladdy, you know, just selling the scouting angle. So they've got it all figured out. All right, last match of this Group C is G2 versus Team Liquid. And so G2, another one of these teams that has elected not to make any changes. They're sticking to their guns. They finished the season last season, and they're not going to go ahead and make any changes. Hunter, Nico, Monacy, JKS, and Hooksy. Swanee as coach. Now, going into this one, it's going to be Liquid, but they've had 2 changes on this team, Rainwaker and Patsy, coming in for Nitro and EliGE. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on what do you think Liquid shape is going to be going into this one? Because the odds really favor G2 at 1.283, whereas for Liquid 3.3, 3.324, like, I don't know.
I think the odds are too big for TL. Spoiler, I'm going to say a TL underdog bet, and here's why. There are reasons to be against the TL move. Like, obviously, it's one thing to have EliGE go out. I get that. He wasn't in the best form. He hasn't found his place in the modern day Liquid. But who you bringing in, right? So you're bringing in, and obviously Nitro went out and Yekindar became IGL, right? So first things first, you're bringing in Patsy. I actually think he's a pretty strong rifler. I did enjoy watching him in Spirit. I thought he was one of the talents of last year who emerged and showed he has skills. That's a good rifle lad. You've added another strong player there. Now you've got 3 strong riflers. You've got Patsy, you've got Yekindar, you've got Naf. My issues is this. Rainwaker, I'm assuming, first of all, he's Bulgarian. If people don't know, Daps was the one who found Cirque and put him into his team back in NRG. That's how he got that player and became good. It's another Bulgarian player. One, he probably has the hookup. He can probably even ask people like Cirque, is this guy actually good? And 2, Daps is a coach who trusts his eye. If people don't know, he picked Mixwell for Optic back in the day. He's actually picked a lot of talents, and even some of the ones he didn't went on to be good players. So I have a lot of trust in Daps' eye. So what I'm going to say is this. I trust the Patsy move. The Rainwaker one, I'm sort of riding with the angle that like Daps knows what he's doing. As far as I know, I assume in this team he's going to be one of the more supportive elements, and they picked him because he fits the roles. So then the issue becomes the other 2 players that aren't called NAF, right? I don't believe in Yekindar as an IGL. He has the classic secondary caller syndrome where it's like, when I just already call when it's obvious what I should do and I have some info, I'm a genius. Like, yeah, you know what? Call up the following list of people. Shocks, Cold Zera, NBK, like, bro, this has happened a million times. Alu. And I tell you what, it always ends in tears. So I think in the short term, he probably did bring some things to the game, not least because he's such like a high impact entry fragger. He can see certain things on the map or timings that you're not going to see as the IGL elsewhere on the map. The issue is, how's that going to work? So to me, there's 2 angles here. 1, I don't think he'll be as good an IGL as Nitro was. And then 2, this might impact his game. This might take that insane, like, you remember that game against Navi at the major where he was just running in, just clapping heads all over. That's probably not going to happen if you're the IGL. Also, how do you IGL and then hard entry like that? That's going to be crazy. So to me, I think the Yekindar angle's the dodgy one. Also, keeping OC, it's like, bro, you know, Dexter and Wonderful. Like, Wonderful plays on Sprout now, mate. Dexter plays for nobody. Like, if you became a European team, can we just have an AWP already? The main reason to keep OC was you wanted NA players. Like, I will say, he's better than I originally thought he was when he joined Liquid, but he's never been like the superstar AWPer that you want. He isn't the guy where it's like, right, he'll carry the game. So I think Liquid is all over the place. But here's the key thing. Because they're playing G2 and they didn't change people, and the odds are massive, in the long term, I think G2 will be a better team than Team Liquid. But in an opening BO3 with 3.3 odds, This can happen. Like, I actually think the sort of flaw of the like skill level on Team Liquid isn't bad. The pieces have to fit together. Meanwhile, for G2, one, they are just a team that's they're hard to feel like you can rely on them. They're not a squad where it's like the Vitalities and the Heroics of the world where I know they're going to win.
Sure.
You never know. Sometimes they have the odd game, doesn't go here, there. And then also, they're the team I'm actually underwhelmed didn't make a move. I get why Vitality and Heroic, I mean, Vitality even did, but I get why Heroic didn't. I get why FaZe didn't. They've got set really good rosters. G2 has really good players, but man, I think the Huxley year has been quite underwhelming. Maybe they're giving him more sort of leeway because he won the 2 tournaments. Like, I don't know. Personally, I'm surprised if they win tournaments. They can maybe steal one here and there. I thought he's a bit average as an IGL. So I would have personally gone for the big boy IGL upgrade. I'd have found someone we could bring in and then really go for it this year and go into CS2. So I think right now, just because of the odds, I'd take TL for this one. I'm going to go cheeky underdog bet. Also, by the way, how do you scout them? How do you know what TL's map pool is? How do you know how they're going to play? How are you going to play? You don't have any info in that sense. Could just be a DM essentially.
I mean, this is the gamble on whether or not G2, like Liquid, exactly. They have the underdog aura. They come into it, nothing to lose, everything to gain, you know, all that sort of thing. Whereas G2, we're kind of betting on the cold start. Interesting.
Also, the odds for G2 are too low. I wouldn't bet G2's side, put it that way. I'm doing either the underdog from TL or not bet at all.
Actually, okay, hold on. Because it is worth mentioning that there are handicap bets. You can bet for a 2-0. So could you see a world in which, yeah, I know you, like right now we're going Liquid on it, but like, could you see a world in which G2 2-0 Liquid? Because then it's 1.88.
That's not terrible. Yeah, there's the other one. Either do TL underdog or do G2 2-0. Those are the two most likely.
Those have got to be it. Almost 1.9 odds for G2
to 2-0.
Best
price, they're not the most likely, obviously. The best price, though, I think.
Yeah, that would be an interesting one, just to get in there.
Maybe do the 2-0 then, yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's take a look real quick at our overall before we close for the day and these opening matches. And a big thank you to esportsbet.io, our sponsor making these streams possible. There's a few promotions that are happening. In the meantime, you can check them out when you create an account there. Let me see here. If we scroll all the way down to the bottom, when you're on the website, you get into the esports section, you select your currency you want to be betting in, you get into the games. But if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the list, you have the esports list there. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's an outright tab. And if you click on that outright tab, you can see that you can actually bet on who you think is going to win either the whole event, but in this case, it's going to be the groups. And so they have 3 options there, Esports Bet. Blast Premier 2023 for all Group A champion, B champion, or C champion. So I'm going to take a moment here to delve into this because you can get some more interesting stats, right? You're obviously going for a little bit of a play here. So the odds on Group A, though, I don't know. Vitality, NiP,
this is pretty open
gaming, and it's 1.2 for Vitality to win this. That would be the obvious bet, and I guess it's a little bit too obvious given the odds.
I wouldn't do that one. I'd avoid Group A for this.
So we'll avoid Group A on this one. We can take a look at Group B real quick. Heroic 1.4 odds, Navi 3.3, Astralis 6.2, and then Big 18 on Big. Whew. Okay.
For me, this is where the players the Navi bet. Remember, there could be a world where Navi is the best team in the group. Like, why not? It's not impossible. Whereas the Heroic one, I don't hate the odds. It's just you have to be certain they're going to win because that's like right on the line of where I like to bet on the favorite. So I don't hate it. They are the better team. If you want to do a safe bet, that isn't terrible odds. But I think there's a world where Navi just comes out the gate and at least a few of the players are popping. You really do have the EliGE simple combo work. Then suddenly 3.3 looks like a steal. Like that could really happen.
All right. And then Group C is going to be FaZe. Wow. FaZe and G2 split even 2.222. And then Team Liquid at 9.5, OG at 14.2. So they're thinking it's a coin toss over here between FaZe and G2 to take this one.
Here's what you do, right? You want to make your bets make sense holistically. So if you did bet on Team Liquid underdog win, take FaZe to win the group. Because then they might only have to play G2 once and then maybe in the final, or maybe not at all. Who knows? Maybe they lose. If you think G2 just wins anyway and 2-0's Team Liquid, I would take G2 over FaZe at the moment because here's the thing. FaZe does have that thing where they tend to get going as the tournament goes on. They sort of have to get into the playoffs, the big pressure match, the stage. None of that's going to be here. So in a regular matchup, many times G2's beaten FaZe. They have pretty good match into them. The map pool's even better. So I would take G2 unless you did that TL underdog bet, just because you don't want to sort of bet against yourself.
That is okay. Okay.
But I think this is very good money. Either of those two are excellent. 2.2 for either of those two to win is very good. It's just obviously the reason why they've done it like that is it feels like a coin flip which one wins, doesn't it? So they've given you slightly over the coin flip, given 2.2.
Oh, there we go. That's a show. Thank you very much, Thorin, for your insight. And we'll be continuing to keep an eye on things here. These tournaments coming up. Also with Cologne coming up, we'll be having some watch parties. So keep on the social media. Everybody, be sure to follow the channel, and we'll be seeing you next time.